Hello children, welcome back to another session of concept learning with Math Buddy. We're going to be learning about decimals up to hundredths today. We'll use this instrument called place value blocks. Place value blocks, as you have seen it, has some flats, it's got some rods, and it's got some units, right? It's got some small squares which we call as units, right? And in the previous activity, we learnt about units and tenths. What did we learn there? We saw that when I had 1 unit and I cut it equally into 10 equal parts, each part looked like this, right? And we call this as 1/10ths, TENTHS, right? So we called it as 1/10ths. So when I had a unit and I cut it into 10 equal parts, each part represented 1/10ths. Now, what if I want something which is smaller than this? So I don't want to cut it into 10 equal parts. I want to cut it into 100 equal parts. I want really small portion. So you can think of your pizza. So this is 1 unit, it's the same as 1 pizza. It's a square pizza, right? So previously I had cut this pizza into 10 equal parts because I had 10 of my friends to share it, right? So when I cut it into 10 equal parts, each part looked like this, and we call this as 1/10ths. Now instead of 10 friends, I've got 100 friends, and I want each and every one of those friends to get a very small portion. I want them to get something from this pizza. So I cut it to 100 equal parts. So how will each part look like if I take this 1 unit or 1 pizza and I divide it equally into 100 parts? Each part will look like this, right? Basically, I have 100 such parts in this. So each part will look like this. So we call this as hundredths. Okay. So previously it was tenths. Now it is 100. And then there's a THS in the end, hundredths. Okay. What is the difference between 100 and 100ths? What is the difference between these two? So this was 1 pizza. If I take 100 pizzas like this, so this is 2 pizzas, there is 3 pizzas, there is 4, 5, and so on. If I have 100 pizzas like this, that is 100. Okay. But if I take a pizza and I cut it into small portions so that I get 100 small pieces out of it. It's one single pizza, cut it into 100 equal parts, then that is called, each piece is called hundredths. So you have to clearly understand the difference between these two. 100 is something which is much larger than 1 unit. Okay. And hundredths is much smaller than 1 unit. Okay. So okay, so now if I want to write this in decimal form, if I want to write something in decimal form, how will I do it? Or let's go back to our regular fractional form, and I had something like this. How will we write this in fractional form? We had 1 unit, so we used to represent this in mixed fraction, right? So we had 1 unit, right? And then we had this whole thing was divided into 100 parts, and I've got 10 parts here and 1 part here, right? So we can write this as 1 unit, and we can say that I have 11/100 portion of a pizza, right? If I had 1 full pizza, it will be 2 units, but I have only 1 unit and 11 small portions of this pizza. So 1 unit and 11/100. This is how we can write this in mixed fraction, right? When we want to write the same thing in another form, we can write it as 1.11. Okay. So this is called decimal representation. Okay. I have 1 whole unit and 11 parts out of 100. I can write it as 1.11. And when we did our previous activity, what did we learn? We had this as 1 unit, then we had a decimal point. This part represent tenths, right? And this part, the next digit that we have, will represent hundredths. Okay, this represents tenths, and then the next part represents hundredths. So if you have to represent this, so what we will do is we will use 3 cards here. So let's place all the 3 cards. One of them says units, tenths and hundredths, right? We'll place the unit in the first card. We'll place the tenths. So this divided into 10 equal parts look like this, right? So this represents tenths. And then I have 100ths, right? So you can put units and then put a decimal point. The number of tenths, I've got 1/10, and then I've got 100ths. So that's how we write this whole thing in decimal form as 1.11. Okay, let's take one more example. Let's say I have 3 pizzas. Okay, so I've got 3 units, and I've got 3/10 of a pizza, and I've got some hundredths. So let's say that I've got 4 really small pieces of this pizza. So I've got 3 full pizzas, 3 units, then I've got 3/10, and then we've got 400ths. How do we write this? So if I had to write this again in fractional form, we would have written this as 3 units. Then I would have kept these 3 together, and you can actually place this like this, right? And we see that there are 30 small divisions here, and then there is 4 here. So we've got 34 small pieces, right? And one whole is composed of 100 such small pieces. I've got 34 pieces. So we would have written this in fractional representation as 3 wholes, and then 34 pieces out of 100, right? This is how we would have represented this in fraction. When we come to decimal representation, we write this as 3 units, 3 wholes, same as 3 units. Then we put a decimal point, and then we write the same 34. Okay, and this 34, you can see that there are 3/10. That's what I have here, 3/10, and then I have got 400ths. Okay, so units, tenths and hundredths. Okay, so this is how we represent numbers in decimal form. I hope you all got a very clear understanding of the meaning of tenths and hundredths. Go ahead and represent lot more numbers. If you have any questions, you can always write to us at support@mathbuddyonline.com. Thank you.